Do you remember the old fable of the blind men trying to figure out what an elephant was? The first blind man walked up and grabbed the trunk and said, "Oh, an elephant's just like a snake." The next blind man walked up and found the tusk, and he felt how smooth it was and sharp and pointy at the end. And he said, "Wow, an elephant's just like a spear." The next blind man walked up and hit the broadside of the elephant and went, "Whoa, an elephant's just like a wall." And the last blind man walked up and he found the leg, and he felt the leg and he went, "Whoa, an elephant's just like a tree, like a populus tremuloides." Well, all of them were partly right, yet all of them were completely wrong. Hi, my name's Garnet Miro, and folks, we've got an elephant in the room, and it's probably pink, and it's probably time we take a step back and have a good conversation about visual resource management and forest stewardship planning. So let's get started. All right, so it's probably important to, again, take that step back. And let's talk about the Forest Practices Code and where we came from. Of course, the Forest Practices Code era was one of, fairly complex situations where there was a lot of, policy framework and what that really sort of put people into spots, and fairly prescriptive. 19 regulations and 7 legally binding guidebooks, along with a whole assortment of other guidebooks to guide us and give practitioners something to go on. And it was out of this that we developed a guide to visual quality objectives. And again, this is part of that legacy. And we touched on that in the introduction. So again, now we're in FERPA 2004. FERPA comes along and it simplifies things. We've got fewer regulations. There's no legally binding guidebooks. And it removed a lot of administrative steps for approval. And as I've shown you before, FERPA has these 11 values. And of course, these 11 values are all interconnected. So we're not really looking at these in isolation of each other. All right, so this past summer, 2016, there was a group of us in the Kamloops TSA that participated in a subgroup of the TSA Steering Committee. And our role or our goal was to, combine our forces and put our minds together and come up with what we felt would be a good forest stewardship plan for this round of renewals. Say that 10 times. Ultimately, a lot of the first round of forest stewardship plans were done in 2004, 2006, that kind of thing, and many of them are expiring now after 10 years, and it's time to renew them. And one of the tests that we had was, Garnet's mum, and of course, it was inferring there that if my mum could read this and make sense of it, then we've achieved what we wanted to, and that was to really simplify the language and make it easy to read for the public consumption. So the Garnet's test, now Garnet's mom's test. And clearly my mom always felt I would be a planner. Here she's taking a picture of me on my first day of school, heading off to kindergarten. And if you look closely, you'll see I'm wearing a tartan briefcase. So there you go. Anyway, a good place to start with this conversation is first making a couple clarifying definitions. And Lindsay Van de Steeg from the Thompson Rivers District was, a big part of the Forest Stewardship Plan subcommittee. And ultimately, I thought I'd reach out to her and ask her what her opinions were, or interpretation of what's the difference between a result and a strategy. So let's jump into the conversation. I've just introduced her.
I'm Lindsay Van de Steeg. I'm the acting tenured forester at the Thompson Rivers District, and I'm also the FSP project lead at the Thompson Rivers District, and I've been heavily involved with the FSP subcommittees in our TSA as well as the provincial training.
Yeah, really good. Well, thank you for that. So I'll just jump right into it here, Lindsay, and my first question to you is, could you explain to us what a result is?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the FPPR, result means a description of measurable or verifiable outcomes for a particular established objective, and the situations or circumstances that determine where in an FDU the outcomes under A, which is the measurable or verifiable outcomes, will be applied.
Okay, no, that's pretty clear. Now, of course, people that are writing forest stewardship plans, they can do either a result or a strategy. So maybe it's worthwhile if you could explain to us what a strategy is.
Absolutely. So a strategy means a description of measurable or verifiable steps or practices that will be carried out to meet a particular established objective, and the situations or circumstances that determine where in an FDU the steps or practices will be applied.
Okay, all right. So I think I caught the difference there, but maybe you could just explain like the difference between the two.
Absolutely. The key difference is that a result is a description of the outcome or outcomes, whereas a strategy is a description of the steps or practices to meet an objective.
Okay, so people have that flexibility to do either one, and typically, you're going to do a result or a strategy, correct?
Correct.
All right, really good. All right, so you mentioned at the introduction there that you've done some training and you're part of the reviewing part of the Thompson Rivers District there. Maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of what you see are common mistakes people make when they submit their forest stewardship plans.
Sure. And the things that I'll mention are things that have been identified in the Forest Practices Board reports on FSPs, as well as throughout the training that happens throughout the province. So,
okay.
One of the things is imprecise language, so things like will, consider, or may.
Yeah.
If the proponent did not address the who, what, where, when, why, and how, that result or strategy is being applied. For strategies, actually identifying the steps and actions and process for that strategy, and obviously must be written so that it is measurable, verifiable, and enforceable.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a pretty good list. And again, these are resources that would be available for anyone if they wanted to go online. They could find the board's findings and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Okay. Really good. Well, Lindsay, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it, and I think that you've added a lot of value to what folks are looking forward to learning about. And we're going to put this all in the context of visual resource management. So, thank you again, Lindsay.
Sounds good, Garnet.
All right, very good. Bye now.
Bye.
Okay, so as you can see, it was very clear from what Lindsay had to share with us that there is a difference between a result and a strategy, and ultimately it's up to the tenure holder to come up with what's going to work for them. Now, how do you come up with that? Well, as a subcommittee group, we looked at the district manager's expectation letter of May 6, 2016, and it was a little bit longer than this. There's a bit more content, and here we go. Rick Summers pointed out what his expectations were for visuals. Now, he did focus on the things he didn't want to see, but that still gives us good guidance. I think what it really came down to is that there's no appetite for exemptions, and ultimately, write up your stewardship plans to meet the objectives, either a result or a strategy. And if situations are such that they are, your way out would be FPPR 12.7. So these are the expectations of the district manager. So again, what is visual quality? Let's just sort of have a look at this. Again, now we're going to take that step back and look at this elephant. Again, the FERPA regulations came in, and location, scale, and shape were key additions to FERPA that didn't exist in the code era. And ultimately, this is where we're guided as practitioners to meet the intent of the FERPA. So here's the definitions, and of course I don't expect you to read this, but you just go to FPPR section 1.1, it's all there. But what I want to point out is some of the problematic language in here. What I see, the first thing is that it references landscape, and as many of you know already, because this is an advanced course, is that we're not really assessing landscapes, we're assessing landforms. And I think that's a very, very important distinction to make, and it's something that came up in the Forest Appeals Commission and Forest Practice Board audits and investigations. So again, landforms are the key, not landscapes. Next I see here is significant public viewpoint. Again, what is the definition of that? And I'm just going to go bang, 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 bang. There we go. each one of these lacks a definition. So again, I'm curious, as a practitioner, what do you feel are the proper definitions for these things like easy, not easy to see, moderate in scale, geometric in shape? What does that mean? And ultimately, this is the elephant. What does it mean? All right. So what I'm asking you to do is find an example of a forest stewardship plan result and or strategy that you feel is going to reflect what the district manager's expectations are in 2017 with this second round of forest stewardship plans that are being developed, and bring it to the session, and we're going to have a great conversation about it. So I'm Garnet Miro, and I look forward to seeing you in the training.